Now, I have to tell you, when I woke up this morning, I was not sure this was going to be a good day, amen? But I can tell you tonight, when I go to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning after we clean up the garbage, that I will have said, today it's a good day, amen? But there are a lot of days, I have to tell you, that I wake up of recent or go to bed at the end of a day, and I'm not convinced that things are moving in the right direction. A lot of times before I go to bed, I watch the news. Again, even more tragedy and senseless violence today. It makes me a little bit concerned. I don't know about you, but it makes me a little bit concerned. I'm not sure that we're moving in the right direction. Amen? I look at the things that are going on in our world. I look at some things that are going on in our government. I look at things just going on in general, and I'm not convinced that it's all moving in the right direction. How about you? How about you? And sometimes I'm really concerned. How about you? And what do we do when we get concerned or thinking things are moving not in the right direction? Pray would be a good thing. But I think most of us actually kind of sit at our tables or sit at our desks or gather wherever we gather. We grumble and we complain. Amen? Now, I'd like to think that pray over there was the right answer. But let's be honest. Most of the time, most of us probably spend more time complaining. Yes or yes? Yes or yes? Yes. We complain about the weather. We complain and grumble about sports teams. We complain and grumble about our government. Yes or yes? We complain about the fact that we got to go back to school. Yes or yes? Yes, exactly. And if you can relate to that, and we especially sometimes wonder whether our leaders are moving us on the path that they should be. Amen? Can you relate to this? Yes or yes? And if you can, then you can relate to the first reading this evening. The people, the Israelite people, what were they doing about Moses and Aaron? They were grumbling. Did you hear that? What were they doing? They were grumbling and they were complaining. They weren't sure either that Moses, this great, strong man of faith that clearly God has chosen, they were not convinced, they were not sure that Moses, on behalf of God, was leading them in the right direction. And what did they do? They grumbled and they probably not so different than us. And yet Moses, far wiser, far holier, he did not give in to that grumbling and complaining. What did he do? He brought himself to prayer. And he brought himself to the Lord, and he gave his concerns and the concerns of his people, he gave them to a very good God. And what did that good God do? That good God provided for them in their every need. Amen? And yet so often, we do not remember that. We forget that. And St. Paul in our second reading is another great example of somebody who didn't give in to the worries and concerns and the grumblings of his time. Instead, St. Paul heard the call of Christ to a much more excellent way and called himself and called his followers to that very same excellent way. He called them and he calls us to a path of righteousness and holiness and truth. He called them not just to sit back and grumble, complain, worry, or get caught up in their doubts and fears, but he called them to the way of Christ, to the way of holiness, to the way of righteousness, and to the way of truth. Then go to our gospel tonight. See, the theme for today is what? Joy. The theme for today is what? Joy is not just having a fun day at the fest. Joy is not just getting rid of all of our worries and concerns. Joy is not just having all our problems solved. Joy, as we learn in our gospel tonight, is remembering at every moment, every day, every second of our lives that God has set his seal upon us, that the Lord has chosen us and claimed us, and that the Lord walks faithfully with us at every moment and in every circumstance. Jesus says, I am the living bread, I am the saving cup, and I am the strength and the solution to every problem you have now and forever and ever. And that, my sisters and brothers, to live in that awareness at each moment, in each day, and in each second of our lives means that every day, every circumstance, and every situation, we should be filled with joy. And again, joy is just not having a fun and happy day. Joy is always remembering that the Lord has set his seal upon us, and that the Lord will be with us as living bread, as saving cup, as our hope, our strength, and our salvation, always and forever. And yet, we need to live in the daily reality of our lives. And that's why we can relate to our first reading this evening. That the people of Moses and Aaron's time, two highly credible individuals, they were very concerned whether they were being led down the right path. And so they gave way to not a good way, not a constructive way of grumbling, complaining. And yet Moses, so wise, he gave himself to God. And God gave him the help and strength and gave the people all that they needed. And St. Paul, wonderful role model for all of us, challenged himself and challenges each of us to a much more excellent way of living. And what is our source of hope and joy? That in every circumstance and in every situation, the Lord is with us always. Amen? So they posed a good question to Jesus. What can you do? So I would like to suggest 3 very practical things that all of us can do. By the time you walk off these grounds tonight, you will find something that uses the theme of the day, which is? I would invite you to put that someplace that you can see it always and every day forever. Why? Because every day, our hearts should be filled with joy. And let that remind you what joy is really all about. It's trusting, believing, thinking, knowing, being aware that our God is with us and has set his seal upon us. Live a life of joy. Live it daily. Live it generously. Live it often, and live it boldly. The second, very, very, very practical. Stop grumbling and complaining. Very simple, yes or yes? We have no reason to complain. So think about that. There were some animated students over there. In a couple days, all of our students are going to be grumbling about going back to school. Amen? Moms and dads, not so much. When you grumble about going back to school, what you're forgetting is that going to school is a great blessing. And when you grumble and complain about your husband or your wife, what you're forgetting is that husband and wife is a great blessing from God. Amen? And when you grumble and complain about raising your children, what we're not aware is that too, they are a blessing from the Lord. Or when you grumble and complain about having to go to work or your coworkers, thank God you have meaningful work. Amen? So very, very practical. No grumbling, no complaining. And here's the third. Truth be told, the Holy Father, our bishops, have been trying to make us aware that there are in fact some real concerns going on in our country right now. No exaggeration, no false claim. There is a genuine attack against religious liberty and freedom. Let's paint a picture of what that means. You enjoyed this day, amen? We like the fact that we can gather together in this place, all of us, and celebrating our faith. Amen? And I don't think there's a person here among us that would ever want to lose that opportunity, that God-given right, that freedom, that privilege that we have. Amen? But here's what's going to happen. As much as good people like Bishop Roger and our bishops have been trying to stir up an awareness, we've kind of been going about our day-to-day, trusting, like, oh, this is never really going to happen, it's not a real thing. Or, Father Bob, you're just exaggerating here tonight. And then, when we lose that religious liberty and freedom, what will we do? We will sit back, grumble, and complain. And the grumbling and complaining will be because we have chosen now to do nothing. And when we grumble and complain down the road, we have no one to blame but ourselves. And so tonight, I'm going to simply ask you in this thought to do two simple things. The word disciple itself means the learned ones. Tonight as you leave the grounds, you'll have an opportunity to receive some information about what is going on in our country in terms of religious liberty and freedom. It really does affect all of us, from the youngest to our senior members. Take that information home. All we're going to ask you to do is read it. You form your own minds and conscience, but disciple means to be the learned one. So let's learn about what's going on. Here's the second thing. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to take out your cell phones. I'm going to all ask you to text the fest to a particular number. What are we going to do with that? Because truthfully, we're all going to scatter at one point, and some of you will get information and some of you won't. When you take that cell phone out, when you text that number, in the next several days, we are going to actually just send you some links to some good information. Again, all I'm going to ask you to do is read it and to consider it so that we're learned and that we can make wise and better and holier choices. So if you have a cell phone, now is the moment. Here's the number. Jake, correct me if I get this number wrong. It's been a long day. The number is 25827. It's a short code, 25827. And all you're going to do is text the fest, T-H-E-F-E-S-T. This is something all of you can do. I promise you we're not going to try to sell you anything, but we are going to, in fact, send you good information. So it's 25827. And text the fest. Because here's what's going to happen. We like today, amen? We like the thought that we can gather in a place like this and celebrate our faith, amen? And if we ever lose this right and privilege, which sometimes we take for granted, we'll sit back and grumble and complain, but we'll really be grumbling and complaining because we chose to do nothing. Moses sets for us a really good example. He did not give in to that grumbling and complaining. What did he do? He turned to the Lord and he prayed. And God gave him the grace and the wisdom that he needed, provided for the people. St. Paul, he too did not give in. In fact, he challenged himself and us to a much more excellent way of living. And what is our joy? It's remembering that the Lord has set his seal upon us on a good day like today and at every moment and second of our lives, that we can live in that joy and that each of us have the power and the grace to bring that joy to our world so that mercy and justice and peace and liberty and freedom will exist for all people in Jesus Christ, now and forever and ever. Amen.